This is Tim Yoder with Fit Small Business. I've been a CPA for 25 years, and today I want to help you transfer your QuickBooks Self Employed account to a new QuickBooks Online plan. So, QuickBooks has a conversion wizard for this purpose, and it's improved a lot recently. And so most of the stuff in your QuickBooks Self-Employed will now transfer to QuickBooks Online. So a sample of things that will transfer: your customers, your invoices, your bank connections, as well as the bank and cash transactions, and both your personal transactions and your business transactions from those bank accounts. Those all transfer. Have not seen any issues. I've done this transfer now 3 times with 3 different accounts. I haven't seen any issues with any of those items. Now, vendors. This is a tricky one because in QuickBooks Self-Employed, you can't have a vendor assigned to a transaction, and QuickBooks Online actually requires a vendor to be assigned to the transaction. So QuickBooks Online has to create vendors during the transfer process. And so they do this by pulling out the information from the description. And so sometimes it works really well. Just depends on how what your descriptions look like that come through your bank feed. Sometimes this works well, sometimes it doesn't. So we'll go over how to deal with that. But once we get into QuickBooks Online, you may need to go through and inactivate some of the vendors that it's created. You can't delete them because they're assigned to transactions, so we just make them inactive. Really not a big deal. Does not take long at all to clean up a whole bunch of vendors that you don't want to be there. Not a big problem. Product and services. This can be a little bit bigger issue. So I've seen products and services transfer over flawlessly, and I've seen them not transfer at all. And the issue is that when QuickBooks makes improvements to QuickBooks Self-Employed, they don't roll them out to all users at the same time. And so some QuickBooks Self-Employed accounts will have a little bit more of an enhanced product and services process, and those accounts, the products and services, seem to transfer over to QuickBooks Online. If not, if it's just a very basic where you start, if you're working with products and services and you start typing, and then if you've already created one before, it pops up. If that's the only way to get to your product and services, that's kind of the older style with QuickBooks Self-Employed, and from my experience, those have not been transferring over. Now, QuickBooks is constantly working on this conversion wizard, so I'm not saying it won't transfer. I'm saying to be prepared either way, whether you have more of the enhanced product and services workflow or not. Be prepared for product and services to possibly not transfer over. I've seen it work both ways. Now, unfortunately, there is no way in QuickBooks Self-Employed to export your product and services, because we could easily do that and then import it manually into QuickBooks Online, but you cannot export products and services from QuickBooks Self-Employed. So that's just an issue. Be prepared. If you decide to make this transfer, you may have to input those by hand. The good news is once you get those imported into QuickBooks Online or input manually into QuickBooks Online, you can manage your products and services so much better than QuickBooks Self-Employed. It's really good in QuickBooks Online. Okay, so what are our steps that we're going to complete in order to convert our QuickBooks Self-Employed to QuickBooks Online? Well, first of all, we're going to go into our Self-Employed account and do a few things. We have to verify that all of our transactions that have come through our bank feeds have been reviewed and classified. Anything not reviewed or classified will not transfer. We want to go in and print all of our available reports. You can either print them to PDF or print them to paper, whatever you want, because after you do this conversion, your QuickBooks Self-Employed account is going to be gone. Like, you cannot get back into it. So make sure you get all of the reports you might ever need, get them out of QuickBooks Self-Employed before you do this conversion. I'm going to show you how to manually export all of your transactions. This is just a precaution in case something fails with the conversion, so that at least you have not lost all of your transactions. You have them all. You can deal with them manually, import them manually if you have to. That's it. That's what we need to do to clean up our QuickBooks Self-Employed. Then we're going to execute this conversion wizard, and then finally we'll go into QuickBooks Online and do a few things to clean up. So we're going to inactivate those vendors that we know that we don't want, that they've created from our descriptions. We're going to reclassify our personal income and expenses to equity accounts, and then we'll look and see if our service items have transferred, and if not, we're going to have to input those. So that's the process we're going to go through. So let's get started. So we're within the QuickBooks Self-Employed company. So the first thing we're going to do is let's just take a quick tour to see what information is in here, so then we can verify when it transfers to QuickBooks Online. So let's start with the Transactions tab. And if we go in here, we can see that I've set up 3 accounts. So I've established links to a credit card account and to a checking account, and then I also have a cash account. And the cash account just appears automatically when I enter transactions by hand. So those are the 3 accounts that we're going to try to transfer over to our new QuickBooks Online company. Before the transfer, make sure that you've reviewed and categorized all of your transactions. Anything that has not been reviewed will not transfer over. So a quick way to double check that is here. Let's just filter by unreviewed transactions, and we can see that there's no transactions there. Great, so we'll go back to all. While we're here viewing transactions, let's go ahead and export all of our transactions. I'm going to do this just in case something doesn't transfer over to QuickBooks Online or there's some sort of problem, because again, once you make the transfer to QuickBooks Online, your QuickBooks Self-Employed is gone. You will not be able to get into it. So you need to make sure you get all the information you want out first. Hopefully everything will transfer and you'll be okay. But just in case, it's a good idea to export all of your transactions. So I'm going to export them all just in one big file. Within the file, it'll show which account they came from. So if you need to at a later point, you can sort them out however you see fit. I just have everything selected here, and I am going to hit this export button. I only have transactions over the last 12 months. If you have more transactions, you can adjust this. So I'm just going to hit export, and here you can see that it is exported into a CSL file. Should be in your downloads folder. Make sure it's somewhere that you know where it's at in case you need to find it later. Okay, great. So that's the transactions. Let's look what else we have in here. Let's go to our invoices. So I have 2 invoices set up. So I've issued one. I have 2 customers, Jane Doe and John Buck. So we're going to want to make sure that those 2 customers transfer over. And then I have 2 invoices. One invoice has been paid. The one to Jane Doe has been paid. The one to John Buck is still outstanding. Okay, I do have a couple of service items set up, so I'm going to just create an invoice. We won't go through the whole process, but down here in add work, if you start typing, I have bookkeeping is one service item I have set up at $60 an hour, and then another service item I have set up is tax preparation at $500 per unit. And so those are the only 2 service items I have set up, but we will set those up and then see if they transfer. Okay, let's see what else. So that's really the only things that we need to look at to transfer over, so I'm not going to save this invoice. But the other thing we want to do, so yes, exit without saving. The only other thing we want to do is go to our reports, and let's make sure we print any report we might be interested in the future, because again, we're not going to be able to get back into QuickBooks Self-Employed once we do this conversion. So go through here. If you've been using QuickBooks Self-Employed for a while, I'm assuming you know how to do these reports. The biggest thing would be the profit and loss statement, whatever time period you would like. And then you can view it, and you can print it to either paper or you can print it to a PDF. So I'd go through here, and whatever you think you might need in the future, make sure you print reports for right now, because once we do these next few steps, this QuickBooks Self-Employed account is going to be gone. Okay? Good. So let's do the conversion now. So let's from here we go up to our cogwheel. And then we're going to do upgrade. Okay, and here we can choose our plan. I'm going to choose Simple Start. You can look through the features, choose whichever plan works best for you. I would choose probably the least expensive plan that you think is going to work because it's very easy to upgrade in the future. This upgrade from Self-Employed to QuickBooks Online is kind of a more complicated update because the two systems are so much different from one another. But once you get up to Simple Start, then upgrading is really just nothing but turning on extra features. But this update we're doing now is kind of upgrade we're doing now is kind of difficult because they're totally different systems. Okay, I'm just going to choose Simple Start. Okay, so we'll no longer be able to export to TurboTax or estimate quarterly taxes, and here are some of the great things that QuickBooks Online will do. If you're curious about features of QuickBooks Online and all of these different plans that they have, Fit Small Business, we do have a great article. If you just Google QuickBooks Online comparison, you'll see Fit Small Business, one of the first results there, and that's a great article. It goes through and compares the features of all of the different QuickBooks Online plans. I will throw a link to that article in the YouTube description. So let's move on now. So we're going to say sounds good. Okay, we are going to bring all of these things. So these are some of the things that won't transfer over. So we can look at those. I haven't found that to be all that accurate, actually. I think that they've recently added a lot of stuff to be transferred over, so I wouldn't put too much weight in what they tell you here. So let's say bring my data. Okay, this will give us a summary of what they're going to do. We can hit continue. Okay, we're all packed up and ready to go. So all we need to do is hit to QuickBooks Online and it will do the transfer. Okay, so now I am now inside of our QuickBooks Online company. So kind of fill you in what happened when I did the continue on the conversion wizard. It did take me through, and then it timed out before it actually came up with any sort of success message. I have had that happen before. There doesn't seem to be any consequences to that. All I did is I logged out, and then I logged right back in, and when I logged back in, my self-employed appeared for a second, and then it forwarded me over to this new QuickBooks Online company. Now, when the first time you come into your QuickBooks Online company, it's going to ask you a lot of questions to help personalize QuickBooks Online. These are the same questions you'd have to answer whether it was a brand new QuickBooks Online account or we're transferring from self-employed like we are. So I've already worked my way through all of those questions. Please take your time, try to answer the questions to the best of your ability, and that will really help QuickBooks Online be personalized for you. So I've gone through all that process. I'm now sitting at my main dashboard here, and now let's look through and see if everything's transferred. First place we're going to go is to our chart of accounts. That's where we can view transactions. So I'm going to go to bookkeeping, chart of accounts. Now it gives me a little bit of a warning that I'm taking a peek under the hood. It's fine. You're not going to mess anything up. The big thing is within the chart of accounts, don't try to input transactions directly into your chart of accounts. If you have a bookkeeping background, it's sometimes tempting to do that. It's much better to enter all of your transactions the way QuickBooks Online was designed for, with all of the input forms. So don't do changes directly to this chart of accounts. But viewing them is not going to hurt anything. Okay, so we have 3 accounts we wanted to transfer over, right? First, we have our cash account. So let's view the register. That will give us the transactions. And excellent. It does look like our transactions. I only had 2 of them. We had a payment for contract labor and we had a receipt of $500. This other balance adjustment is just getting the beginning balance to 0. It's basically assuming under self-employed you were just a sole proprietor and so you didn't have cash sitting around specified for the business. It was just all mingled together with your personal cash, and so it's assuming that the balance is just 0. So that's why it has that $250, what I would call a plug number, to get the beginning balance to 0. The important thing is it does show the income and expense. Okay, let's go back to our chart of accounts. Then we also set up a bank account. So here is our bank account. Notice the little arrows here, that means that this account has already been connected. So not only did it transfer the transactions, it transferred the bank connection, which is really nice. So I'm going to hit View Register. Okay, and we've got some income amounts, we've got some personal expenses, and office expenses, income. Okay, so the one thing we want to make sure of is on our personal expenses, rather than be in an expense account, which this is, they need to be recorded to a equity account. You don't want your personal expenses clogging up your income statement. So let's look and see how they've coded these so far. So it looks like what they've done. Oh, okay. So this shows the type here as expense, but here they actually have it coded to personal expenses equity. That's really good. That's exactly where we want. But we need to go through here and make sure all of our personal expenses are coded to one of these equity accounts. So it could just be personal expenses, or it could be one of these sub accounts, but that looks great. Okay, so they do have them coded to the personal expenses. Fantastic. I'm going to hit save. And I believe that was the only personal expense I had, and so that's all we need. Okay, let's go back to the chart of account and let's look at the credit card statement. Okay, here we go again. It's got the little arrows, meaning that the connection has already been established. So I'm going to view the register. Okay, now here it treated my personal expenses a little differently for some reason. In the checking account, it actually automatically coded them to our to the personal expenses in the equity. Here it didn't. Here it just put them as uncategorized. So we need to take these out of uncategorized and put them to that equity account. So I'm going to just highlight it here, and let's change this to our, if we scroll down to our equity, to our personal expenses, and save it. Okay, that's going to get it off of your income statement and directly into the equity section of your balance sheet, so that your income statement truly shows just your business income and expenses. So all of these uncategorized expenses, we need to go through and code them to personal expenses. Okay, and I'm not going to spend time doing the rest of them, but you need to go through all of your transactions and make sure anything specified to uncategorized expense, if that is in fact a personal expense, which I think it will be, that's the ones that have been classified as unclassified, you need to go through and code that to personal expenses within the equity section. Okay, great. So that takes care of our register. So it looks like all the transactions came over. We need to go through and classify the personal expenses as personal, so that they get taken off of the income statement. Fantastic. Let's go to our I think it's the business overview. Yeah, let's business overview. Now let's just check on our bank accounts here. Let's make sure everything is connected. See, the balances here are 0. That's probably not correct. So I'm just going to hit update, and let's make sure that the connection is still working. Okay, great. So it looks like the connections are still live. We haven't had to reestablish them. If you do need to reestablish them, connecting the account it's the same process as what you used in QuickBooks Self Employed. The only danger is when you reconnect it, make sure that you don't duplicate transactions. So make sure the starting date you specify for retrieving transactions is the day after the latest date already showing in your bank account. But it should work fine, just like it worked for me. Okay, so that's our checking accounts. A couple other things let's check on is our let's go to our invoices. So here, that's under Get Paid and Pay. Let's look at our invoices. Excellent. We have 2 invoices. We have John Buck, which has not been paid yet, and Jane Doe, which has been paid. So perfect. Those transferred over perfectly from QuickBooks Online. I'm sorry, from QuickBooks Self Employed. The other thing I want to check, let's make sure that our customer list is correct. Yes, so Jane Doe and John Buck transferred over. I believe these other 3, I think they were set up as sample clients in QuickBooks. I think they were set up as sample clients in QuickBooks Self-Employed, and so they transferred over as well as the 2 clients that I wanted to transfer over. And we can make them inactive here since we don't need them. Okay. Now we want to check on our products and services. Remember, I had set up 2 products and services, bookkeeping and tax preparation. I have a little bit of a lag here. Okay, so they're not showing here. Let's look one other place. Okay, so our product and services did not transfer over, and that's fine. We've only had 2. We can add them. If you have a lot, that's unfortunate. You'll have to add them by hand just by going to the Add a Product or Service. Now, this is going to sound a little crazy, but I've been playing with QuickBooks Self-Employed for several days now. Some QuickBooks Self-Employed are different than others. So I've logged into QuickBooks Self-Employed under one username, and the products and services interface within QuickBooks Self-Employed was fairly different. And in that instance, the products and services did transfer over. And in this instance, the product and services did not. So I know in the other version I had used, when I clicked on the invoice field within QuickBooks Self-Employed, it had immediately dropped down all of the available items that I could choose from. Today, in this version of QuickBooks Self-Employed, I know I had to start typing before anything would appear, and then I could choose bookkeeping, or I could choose tax preparation. So sometimes products and services will transfer over, sometimes they will not. That's unfortunate. You know, not much you can do about it one way or the other. Hopefully it will. If it does not, be prepared to have to enter all of those by yourself. Now the good news is in QuickBooks Online, it's very easy to work with products and services. If you need to change a product and service, it's very easy to do that. And so I know QuickBooks Self-Employed, it's painful when you want to change a product or service, because you can't. You can't change a product or service, the description of it. You can't change it. You have to go in and actually create a new one. And so QuickBooks Online is miles ahead in the way you manage products and services. So hopefully they'll transfer over, and then you can make any changes you want. If they don't transfer over, you're going to have to go in here and do it yourself. Unfortunately, there is no way to manually transfer them over. I've looked in QuickBooks Self-Employed. There is no way to export your products and services so that you can import them into here. So something you'll have to deal with. If they don't transfer over, you're going to have to enter them by hand. Okay, I think the last thing we want to look at now is our vendors. So vendors, this is a little bit crazy, but there's really no other way to do it. So the issue is QuickBooks Self-Employed does not allow you to enter a vendor name. However, QuickBooks Online requires you to have a vendor name. And so when you transfer from QuickBooks Self-Employed to QuickBooks Online, the conversion wizard has to create vendors. And so the way they do that is they use the description of the bank or credit card charge in order to create a new vendor. And so the names that they get for the vendors most often are completely wrong. And so we're going to go in here and we're going to have to inactivate all of these vendors that have been created so that they don't clog up our system. So obviously I'm having a little bit of a problem. Okay, so these are the vendor names that QuickBooks Online has automatically pulled out of the description. Some of these actually don't look too bad. The ones that we don't want, we're going to inactivate, and the way we do that is just by checking the box. Okay. This actually has done a pretty good job. QuickBooks is working hard on making this transfer wizard better, because I can see improvements every time I do every time I run this wizard. I can see improvements, and so these vendor names are actually pretty good. But we'll go through and we will inactivate the ones that we know are not actually vendors. And if you see any of the others that you know they were a vendor that you're not going to use anymore, you could inactivate them as well. Okay, so I've checked all the ones I want to inactivate. Oh, that's not a vendor. Let's get rid of that. Okay, so I'm going to go to batch, make inactive. Are you sure? Yes. There we go. Okay, so we've made those vendors inactive. Excellent. Okay, so I think that's all we need to do. We've now been converted over to QuickBooks Online. Let's take a quick look at the reports, shall we? Okay, let's look at our balance sheet first of all. So I want to make sure you understand what we're doing with those personal expenses. So here is your balance sheet. Here are all the assets you have. Here is everything you owe. And here is your equity. And so what we've done with our personal expenses by classifying them from unclassified to personal expenses is we're moving them right here. We're moving them into our personal expense portion of the balance sheet. If we classify them as expenses, like unclassified expenses, they come through to our balance sheet in the net income number, which is from our income statement. And so that's going to, that number will not be correct. That won't be your business net income if you have personal expenses in there. So let's take a quick look at the income statement, or profit and loss statement it can be called. And so here we have uncategorized expenses. This is just for a short period of time. There's more than that when we go back a little further. But these uncategorized expenses, these are our personal expenses, right? So we don't want them on the income statement. They're misstating our business net income. And so these are the ones we need to go through and classify as personal expenses, which then go to our equity section. Okay, once you get that done, you should be converted over to QuickBooks Online. QuickBooks Online, I think you will be much happier with it than you are with QuickBooks Self Employed. Much, much more powerful, even the simple start version. If you want to learn more about how to use QuickBooks Online, Fit Small Business, we do have a course of about 45 QuickBooks Online tutorials. It's all completely free. They all have videos with them that I've done. In addition to the videos, they have great written instructions. A lot of people, including myself, I prefer written instructions to videos with screenshots and descriptions of fields. It's really great. Please look those up. You can just Google free QuickBooks Online tutorials. Fit Small Business will be one of the first results there, but I'll also throw a link to those tutorials in the YouTube description. So I hope this was helpful. I hope we've got you converted over from QuickBooks Self-Employed to QuickBooks Online. I look forward to seeing you in some of our QuickBooks Online tutorials, and I hope you have a great day.